Tonight we have Susan Weiss, who is a storyteller working in the mediums of drawing, photography, graphics, and film. She is both a working artist and art educator. Susan's work explores the intersection of identity and the social landscape of contemporary culture. Her documentary work has explored the lives of people in extreme situations, including the border crisis. The film work includes a 2-film series about a female bodybuilder and her quest for competitions, despite difficult odds. Both documentary short films have won awards on the festival circuit. The Orchard is Susan's first published monograph and contains 50 abstract color images of an apple orchard in Vermont. Photographed from 2020 to 2022, the images reflect the changes in nature and the emotional changes of grief, loss, hope, and renewal as experienced by everyone during those years of the pandemic. Without further ado, Susan Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for coming, and thank you to the bookstore staff, and certainly thank you to Dee Dee, my publisher. So I am a photographer, filmmaker. They're asking me to move. I'm going to move over here. And January 2020, I was at the border of Mexico and Texas doing documentary photography of the border crisis, moving between El Paso, Texas and Ciudad Juarez in Mexico for an NGO in Washington, D.C. And I was doing the photography for them. And then I came home, and my life, like everyone's life, changed immediately. And I had been doing documentary work, and suddenly that ended. And I was actually living in San Francisco, but we have a place here in Vermont, and my husband and I said, we got to get out of San Francisco, and we came here, and I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life and with photography, because certainly the documentary work stopped. And there's an orchard where I live. It's an apple orchard. It's actually crab apples, which are little tiny apples, non-edible. Although my UPS driver said you can make vinegar out of them, but I haven't done that. So I said, well, I have to be outdoors. I can't sit indoors all the time, and I didn't have access to a darkroom, but I have a bunch of cameras, so I decided to use instant film, which I could get delivered through Amazon or wherever, and they just, in those days, they were just throwing the boxes out of the truck so you didn't have to deal with them, and I could get the film that way. So I have these cameras. It's a Mint Instacon. It's similar to a Polaroid, but the film is slightly smaller, in case you're a film buff. And they come in cassettes, and like a Polaroid, you put the camera in, you get 10 images out of each packet. And I was working with 2 cameras, and I would go out. It was sort of like my daily meditation to go out every day. So this started in March of 2020, and for 2 years I went into the orchard once a day, twice a day, morning, evening, snow, rain, whatever, to photograph. And it became my escape, my sanctuary, my meditation, my life for 2 years during the really hard times of COVID, and then I continued shooting after that. So this is the story of the transition of the orchard, but more importantly, the transition of certainly my mental state during that era, and I think for a lot of people. And as the months progressed and the orchard would change, there were always changes because of the seasons and the weather, I started noticing similarities between spring, things coming into life and blooming, summer, full-on beauty in the orchard, then fall, things dying. But there was a parallel between that and what was happening with COVID. So I don't know if you remember summer 2020, people were going outside, being much happier, their moods, and then as the fall and the winter came, things got much darker, the mortality rate increased, the orchard got darker, and so there were these parallels between what was happening with the health situation and what was happening in the orchard. And I only knew that because I was spending so much time in the orchard. So I photographed it over a 2-year period using these 2 cameras, and then at the end of the 2-year period, I scanned them. I didn't do much alteration to them in post-editing, and came up with the book. I took a couple classes through International Center of Photography in New York on Zoom, and made a book package, was sending it out to publishers, and then someone I know in Vermont, where I live, Maria Reed, and I'm telling her the story because I had photographed her for some other projects, and she says, oh, you got to call Dee Dee. And I sent this package that I created on my computer to Dee Dee, and I think within an hour, I was very lucky. Dee Dee wrote to me and says, I want to do it. And here we are. So thank you so much, Dee Dee. Dee Dee's been terrific. And it's been an exciting journey for me. So let's look at some of the images. This is not one of them. This is just my...
Where is that? That doesn't look local.
No, you know, that's a generic.
Okay.
Sequoia.
Yeah. Okay, so this started, so it's a composite of 2 years of shooting, but I decided to organize it according to the season. So we started in spring, and the orchard has it started out with about 120 trees, and as the trees got larger, we had to cull out some of them. I had a mentally hard time because I don't want to kill a tree. So we would give them away to friends or plant them somewhere else on the property. So originally when they were smaller, there were about 124 trees.
You like uprooted them and you gave them?
We gave them away. Yeah, I think up until the 5th year. Then they get too large to move. They won't adapt well. But it was clear that they were planted too close together. So I guess in landscape terms, they should be on 15 to 20 foot centers from tree to tree. And I wasn't here when they were planted, and they were on what they call 10-foot centers, 10 feet apart. So it was clear that they would overlap as they got bigger. I blame my husband on that because he wouldn't let me come back when they were planting. And I won't let him forget it either. Okay, so we're in spring, and I was shooting out of focus to get this. You know, I started out with a regular digital camera, and you know, it was just boring images. It didn't reflect what I was feeling, and they just weren't special to me. So I switched to this camera, and I was shooting it out of focus. I was putting filters on the front of the lens to get these images. So these are all in-camera manipulation. Nothing was done afterwards in Photoshop or anything.
Filters? What kind of filters?
Yeah, like filters. So I've got the filters here. They come with the camera. You're a photographer? Yeah.
The hobby, yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I was using filters, sometimes I wasn't, but nothing was done afterwards in Photoshop. So the flowers are a bright pink. So the blooming time is like about May 10th to May 20th, 30th, depending, you know, with a week on either end. You know, you're welcome to come by and drive through and see it. People know about it. They come through. It's really spectacular. It's a 10-day event. It's really spectacular to see it. So, you know, just reach out to me if you want to come and see it. See these cars driving through to look at it because it's really kind of pretty. And I found this tree. So when we bought our house, it was a former sheep meadow, so there was absolutely no landscaping on it. And we had to figure out what we wanted to do because it was totally barren. And someone suggested to me to do an orchard, and I thought that was a great idea. And I did some research, and coincidentally, this is embarrassing, but Martha Stewart was promoting this particular tree, and I checked it out and said, well, let's do this tree because I'm sure she's done incredible research, right? So it's called Indian Malice, and it has a pink flower. It turns red in the fall. So here it is like late spring, early summer, and where we are, we do get fog and, you know, weather changes obviously. So like I said, I would go out every day, doing different times during the day to photograph it. And now we're coming into fall. And then I would get abstract images like this. And thank you. So you can see the little berries forming. The berries start coming up sometime midsummer, and then they grow, and then they are full size in the fall. And that's when they should be harvested, or they drop. there they are. And like I said, my UPS driver said I should make vinegar out of them, but I haven't. And we have a great UPS driver where we are, Mike. So he's been there for years. So, well, this is Vermont, totally.
Where in Vermont?
So I'm outside of Manchester in a town called Dorset. And he's been our UPS driver for over 30 years. So he's a great guy. So I told him he could pick them up and make the vinegar. I wasn't going to do it, but he didn't seem to want to. So now we're coming into fall, winter, and the leaves drop, and it's a very different look, very stark. This is a night photograph. And right now, it looks very much like this. It won't start turning for another month or so. You'll start seeing little buds. And then the flowers come up, like I said, in May, mid-May. So we try to come back for the bloom every year. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it this year for other reasons, but it's like a 10-day event, and it's really spectacular. And I photograph it every year, but and then this is full-on winter. This is actually my favorite shot of the whole thing, whole series. And here's winter with the snow. And so when winter came, and again, these are images from 20 to 21 and 21 to 22 mixed together for winter. Just the darkness, the sadness, the gloom, the depression, really, to me, corresponded with my mood and certainly what was happening with COVID and the news and everything. And I felt it was a perfect reflection, and here's a reflection image, of where I was mentally. And I would say my yard now looks like this. We still have quite a bit of snow. Although when I left this morning, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow when I get back, because I'm sure some of it is melted. So I was going out there every day, manipulating my camera to take, and I would take like 2 packs of film a day, so that's 20 photos, lay them out, select the ones I really like. So I have rejects, and then I have those that I liked, and those, because they're Polaroids or similar to Polaroids, you have to scan them right away because they do degrade over time. So if you want the pure color, you have to scan them. And I don't know that I could reproduce these because it was just a combination of luck, the lighting at that, the natural light at that time, the weather conditions, the settings on the camera. I wasn't taking, I was thinking, should I take notes every day so I know where my camera was set at, blah, blah, blah. And I decided not to, just give it up, relax, and just go out there and photograph. And that's what I ended up doing. So I didn't even keep a journal, a technical journal. I kept notes, but not a technical journal. So for example, the blue, and I think the blue came up because of the way the light was hitting the snow on that particular day and the way the light refracted off of the snow.
Do you provide any information on what time of year or what season each picture represents?
Well, now we're in winter.
Okay.
This is the winter shot. This is not a negative. This is the actual look. I didn't do anything reverse negative kind of thing. And then this is the last shot. That's it. These are in the book. But I took like 600 images and then narrowed it down to 50, edited it down to 50 for the book.
So these are all the shots that are, this is the entirety of what was in the book, all the shots?
Yeah.
What do you think the blue is in that picture?
I think the blue is the sun, actually, that came through as blue. Yeah. So, like I said, the camera is very limited in the controls. And then if you put a filter on it, I don't know how much you know about cameras. Everything's done in camera, and then these are the filters that you can screw on. Close-up filter, colored filters. I wasn't really using colored filters. They screw onto the lens. So, it's a question of luck. and how much time and money you're willing to spend on the film. And so, you know, maybe out of a roll of 10 shots per packet, so you get 10 shots out of this, and I would do 2 a day, so maybe you get 1 or 2 that you're kind of happy with. The rest, some don't come out at all, or you're just not happy with them. So I have a full box of rejects, then I've got some that I have that I like but I didn't scan, which are in this box, and then I have the actual finals, which came down to about 200, and then I edited that down to 50. So then I decided I want to have an essay, and there's a woman that lives near where I am, Eve O. Shobe, who's a writer. And at the time, in 2020, I had asked her to write an essay, and she's sort of like a humorist, and her first book was A Year with No Sugar. Second year was A Year with No Garbage and No Clutter, and the third year was A Year with No Plastics. And with this third book, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's actually been quite successful. She's had a lot of TV and newspaper interviews, and it was just luck that I had asked her to write the essay. And her husband, Steve, is actually my printer, and so I've known them for many years. And I said, Eve, would you mind writing the essay for the book? And at that time, she wasn't really well known. So that was like another lucky outcome of this process. And so she wrote that, and then I wrote in the book a little bit of information on how I came to do the project. So like I said, before I was a documentary photographer, now I'm doing other things, and this is the book. I've done a film. Actually, I've done 2 films now of the same person, a woman who's a bodybuilder, and that's been on the festival circuit, and it's actually been pretty successful. And then I've got Leah. Her name is Leah. She's a woman. She's now 37. I started photographing her when she was 35, and she's what they call in the category called figures, where you go on stage and you pose, and it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but the female version. And I followed her over 2 years when she was in competition. And that also was originally supposed to be a documentary project following her, and through my coursework, so I was also at the same time getting a certificate in visual storytelling at International Center of Photography through Zoom, ICP in New York, which is a big photography school. And I started to show these Leah images, and everyone said, no, wait a minute, this is a film, this is not still photography. So then I made it into a film of sequential still images, and then made it into a film. So that was the first version, and then that was done in 2022, and the film. And then 2023, she was not competing. Then 2024, she went back into competition, and she said this was going to be her final year. I said, okay, I'm in, and I want to photograph and make a real film. And so I used 3 iPhones in film mode to shoot this. I shot it all myself, and used a film editing company to make it, and it's on the circuit, the festival circuit now. I'm sure it'll be in Vermont Film and Folk Art Festival. Do you know about that in Manchester? In May. Yeah, it's called Vermont Folklore and Film Festival in Manchester, and then I saw on their website they're also doing it 2 days in Brattleboro.
Oh, that's new.
That is new, yeah. So, yeah. So that's the story. Thank you for coming. Do you have any questions?
What's the name of the orchard?
It's just
on your property?
It's just on my property. Like I said, we have about 3.5 acres.
Okay.
And when we bought the house, there were like 30 acres that were subdivided, and it was a sheep meadow, and there was absolutely nothing. And I wanted to have some privacy, but I wanted all to have beauty. It was flat. It's a flat lot, so there were no like features in the property that you could sort of highlight. So someone suggested an orchard. And then I started doing research, and then coincidentally, in a Martha Stewart magazine, she talked about this particular tree. So that's how I got to the tree.
And this is a type of apple tree, or
yeah, it's called Indian Malus. It's
Malus, M-A-L-I-C-E?
M-A-L-U-S.
Oh, Malus, okay.
I pronounce it malice.
Okay.
I don't know if that's right. And she highly recommended it for this zone of New England, and because she has a house in Connecticut, and so she's familiar with the zones and the weathers here. So I assume she did a lot of research because she's really Martha Stewart. And I don't do much research, so that's how I got to that tree. And then I ordered them, and we ordered 124, and it turned out to be too many. We were in California. My husband wouldn't let me come back to see them being planted, so they were planted 10 feet apart. And when we did get back here, I said, oh my God, this is not going to work. Because it was so obvious they were so close together that when they matured, they would sort of canopy together. So I still blame him. But
Did you consider trees that would have edible fruit? Like,
We
I know
did.
there's apple trees, apple picking around here, so I assume.
yeah, there's a lot of apple picking. I didn't want to do the work. I mean, that's a lot of work because you have to harvest the apples, you have to pick them up. So these buds, as you saw, they're like about this large. They drop, but it's okay because they're so small. I don't have to have any maintenance. With apples, with edible apples, there's maintenance.
Right.
We still have to spray, and we have to spray because there are bugs, but we have to, maintain the shape of the tree, so there is some trimming that's involved. But it's worth it because it is, especially when they're blooming, it's really spectacular. And the fall is also, they sort of turn yellow-orange, and it's really pretty.
And so the lot, you said it was 30 acres, but it got subdivided. So you have other neighbors?
So we have neighbors we're down a little dirt lane. There are 3 houses. We're the second house. And we wanted to block the view. We wanted some privacy. So we were trying to figure out how to do this. And we came up with the idea of the orchard. And it works, because we can't see anyone else.
You said people are able to, stop by the orchard or drive past?
So we're down a lane, and so if you're driving down the main road that's by our house, and if you know where the house is, you turn into the lane, and then you drive down, and it'll be obvious if they're blooming where our house is. And then we've actually seen people drive onto our property because they know about the trees to look at it. Yeah. And it really, the whole thing turns this beautiful shade of pink. And it's really spectacular.
In the spring?
These about 10 days in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's nothing edible from the trees?
Well, these little berries, which
You can turn into them.
Like little tiny apples is what you're saying?
well, they're officially a crab apple.
Oh, a crab apple.
They're about like this big. I've never tasted one. I have no intention of tasting one.
The birds like them.
Yeah, it attracts birds. We get not a lot of bees, fortunately, but we do get birds. Owls nest in the trees. Last fall, I saw my first bear who came through, and I've been coming here for over 30 years. I hadn't seen a bear. And then one day I'm sitting in my house and I see the bear, and he jumps into the tree from the ground. And he stood up, he stayed in there for about 30 minutes. I'm thinking, oh my God, they could be there other times, and I never bothered to look. A full-size bear. So that was kind of weird. Deer come through, of course, and eat the berries, yeah.
Sometimes I go down to Concord. Is there, so it's close enough, is there somewhere online where we can find the information for the 10-day, for those 10 days when the blooms turn pink, or is it not a public thing?
No, but you can email me,
Oh.
and I'll let you know. I don't know if I'm going to be back this year, but you could certainly come and drive through. There's so many factors that weigh into that, like the weather, most importantly the weather, but for sure by May 15th, it'll be in one day of the 10-day phase.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it'll be different than here because this is farther north.
Mm-hmm.
Do you live around here?
Yeah.
So if you see trees here that are blooming, figure we're maybe 3 to 5 days ahead of what's happening here, I would suspect.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can just, so we have, you know, you come down this lane and then you turn into our property, and we have like a circle driveway, and you can just come in, go around the circle, and then exit, and you'll see the trees. Yeah.
Your choice to have a lot of the photos out of focus,
Yeah.
what was the story you were trying to tell with that?
So I was originally shooting with a Leica, which is in focus, very a digital look, or my iPhone. I do a lot of photography with my iPhone. And it was so straightforward. It just, you couldn't get to the emotional quality that I wanted to have in the images. It was just too straightforward. To me, it was boring. I couldn't tell what I couldn't say what I wanted to say with the image. So I couldn't, and I prefer to shoot with an analog camera, a film camera, but there was no access to a dark room during those days of COVID. Like this woman, Eve, her husband does my dark room developing, but we couldn't, although I was sneaking to his house, I didn't tell anyone. We'd sit like 20 feet apart. That's the only person I saw during COVID. But anyways, this is going on television, right? Anyways, so I thought, well, how am I going to do this? And then, I knew I had these instant cameras, and I was able to get the film delivered. You know, Amazon was delivering during COVID, and they just sort of drive through, throw the boxes out of the truck, and then keep driving, so you didn't have to deal with them. And it worked. And that's when I decided to use instant film. And I've done other projects with Polaroid cameras, so I was familiar with what you can get out of a Polaroid. And to me, and then I started first shooting in focus with the Polaroid, and again, I was still getting images that just didn't really speak to me, and I started playing around, and using some of these lenses or shooting out of focus, and then I got to where I wanted to be.
I think they look great.
Thanks. So, my background is in painting and drawing. My master's degree is actually in painting and drawing from San Francisco Art Institute, which is closed, no longer around, which is a sad story. So a lot of people said to me, these feel like paintings, and I think so, because I'm used to color and paint. And when I was painting, my painting used a lot of photography in my painting. And so it was an easy transition for me to go from painting to photography. And I think there are similarities in my work with my photography work and my painting work.
Have you painted the orchard at all?
I have not, no. So the thing about painting, so I was painting for a long time. I teach drawing and I teach painting.
Is that oil or acrylic?
I do both. My preference is oil. And if you're an oil painter, you need to have great ventilation because it's toxic. And so I would paint in my garage with the doors open. And what happens with painting is you're stuck inside or in a studio painting, and you really have no exposure or communication with other people because you're in the studio all the time. And to me, that was very limiting. And I'm painting, and the paintings were selling, and I'm in shows, but I wanted to be out in the world. And because I had been working with photography for my painting, I decided ultimately to switch to full-time photography. And I like it much better. I miss painting, but I like it much better being out in the world and meeting people, communicating. Yeah.
Would you paint in the open air, like in the orchard? Like impressions?
Like plein air painting. Yeah, I did that, and also would work using photographs as a basis for my paintings also. Yeah. So when I prefer to paint, like I said, in oil, but I do both oil and acrylic.
If you were to do this book again, what would you do differently?
Maybe just go bigger. Make the images bigger, like a bigger format.
Pull your book out.
Yeah.
I saw them at the front counter.
Yeah, they're at the front counter. Yeah, buy one, please. And, this was my first book, and Dee Dee was incredible to help me figure out how to do it, and she made a lot of the design decisions, which I have to say are now in a magazine. So it's featured in this magazine, and it's quite an honor. I don't, what page? Yeah, here it is. Page 12. So the book cover, Dee Dee designed the book cover. She selected the paper and the image, the size. Dee Dee made all the design decisions on the book. So if there was to be a second printing, or we did it over, maybe we go bigger.
Ooh.
I don't know. I don't know.
10 by 12.
10 by 12, yeah. Photography books are interesting because we wanted to keep the price point that was affordable. You know, a lot of photography books are very expensive, and I didn't want to go that route. And, you know, they don't sell like fiction or nonfiction or poetry or anything like that. It's a harder sell, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know, would you agree with that?
Oh, sorry, I missed it.
Oh, I would say photography books are a tough sell.
Yeah, they can be. I think around the holidays.
Right, as a gift book.
It's really easy, yeah. To get
Yeah. So this is my first book tour. I've been very fortunate to get a lot of book engagements, which blew my mind. Dee Dee was amazing, and she has this PDF on how to sell your book, how to put it all the package together and what to do, and I followed it word by word. Aren't I a good student? And I had all these book engagements. I still have one on Saturday, then I have 2 in California.
Don't forget Mass Mocha.
I was at Mass Mocha. I mean, so this is, you know, quite an honor for me. You know, I'm very happy I'm here. You know, but it was Dee Dee who guided me through this PDF that she sends out on how to do it step by step by step. And I just followed all the steps. And, you know, not knowing what I'm doing. And here I am. So, thank you, Dee Dee, again.
My pleasure.
And, yeah. Any other questions? So this is the book. Yeah, you've got the book.
Do you have a favorite photography book?
Do I have a favorite? You know, I tend to buy Polaroid photographers, and there's quite a few out there who have done books. I like black and white photography personally, so I buy a lot of photographers. I have a huge collection, and you know, depending on what I'm trying to do in my own work, are the books that I look at or buy to look at, because I find I get influenced. My big influences are other photographers, obviously, and the movies, and that's how I get to the imagery that I want to make.
Was there a movie you were thinking of when you were taking these?
Is there a movie? There wasn't, actually. But there's some great photographers who are cinematographers in the movies, and that's another thing I started doing in early COVID, is taking this from this one particular person through Stanford, who's been teaching movie classes, and I've taken every one since 2020 from this guy, and it's really been an eye-opener for me on how to look at imagery, how to tell a story through imagery. It's been great.
Who is that?
So his name is Elliot Levine, and in San Francisco, he was the programmer of an indie film house called the Roxy, which is still there. I don't know if you've heard of it. And he was the head programmer there, and he's very immersed in the film world. He's very incredibly knowledgeable, because I've taken from other people, and no one comes close to this guy. And and Stanford was the first place that I knew of that switched to Zoom in 2020, and they were on Zoom by March, April, probably because they're tech, and they figured it out early. And the first class, so you know, I was still in California. We hadn't even come back to Vermont, and I'm scrambling around. How am I going to get through this in this apartment? And I thought, well, let me check what Stanford's doing, and that's when I saw Zoom. And I actually took 2 courses. His first class was sci-fi from the 1950s. I said, I got to take that. That's going to be amazing. And the second one was a drawing class on Zoom. And I said, I've got to take this not to learn how to draw, but to see how they did it on Zoom, because this was spring 2020. And so I teach, at the time I was teaching at the Southern Vermont Art Center, drawing, and I said to them, hey guys, you know, you've got to get going here because this is the future, at least for the COVID years, and start teaching on Zoom. And I took this class just to see how they do it, and it took them a couple months to get used to the concept, and then I started teaching on Zoom, drawing on Zoom. It's not perfect, but for those days it worked. And I think I taught three or four classes for the Art Center in drawing on Zoom. But the film classes have really opened my eyes to some great cinematography, which I think has seeped into my work as a photographer. And now that I'm making films, certainly into my film work. Yeah. So, and any other questions? These are good questions. Do you have any more questions? No? Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you like the book. Thank you.